Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by the one, the only Noah Drury. How's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty well. Had a game last Friday that the result, not necessarily, something you wish for when you're calling a game, but it was something that it was a very good opportunity for me.
Yeah, why don't you just tell everybody what you do?
Okay, so right now I'm currently a student at Specs Howard at Lawrence Tech. Specs Howard is specifically a broadcasting school for
Mhm.
radio and television. I'm currently a student there. I've been doing play-by-play for Heartland throughout the whole season until week 8. My last game was their game against Canton. I did it on an application called Mixler, which shout out to Zach Linfield for helping me, kind of get set up with all of that throughout the season. And then
Mhm.
just this last week, I called a game with Dan Leach on 93.5 WHMI, which was Mason versus Fenton. And that was my first game ever on the radio.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I might as well. Okay, so if you remember Noah last year, he was on the Heartland football team, graduated last year from there. So if the name sounds familiar, that's where it's from. But yeah, how'd you get that opportunity with them?
So WHMI was at the Heartland Novi game in
Yep.
week 2. You were there too as well.
Yep. Yeah, I was. I was in
So,
Heartland. I've been in Heartland a lot this year, bud.
yeah, I know. But so after the end of the game, the general manager there, made a comment about my microphone, and him and Dan kind of listened to me throughout the broadcast as well as theirs. And I got into contact with Rich. I was like, "Hey, is there any opportunities you have at the station?" And he's like, "I might have something for you. Take my information and then reach out to me, and we'll be in touch." And then about 2 weeks later, I sent Rich an email seeing if they had any internships or anything available at the station. And he's like, "We don't have any internships, but I do have a caller analyst spot for you for our week 9 game of the week. Send me some of your stuff from, the games you've done for Heartland for play-by-play, and then I'll see if you're, good enough for the job or whatever." So I actually sent him my Salem Heartland stuff from that game, and then I sent it over to him, and he offered me the spot, and then I really just got into the works with them and everything leading up to last week. And then now he sent me an email literally today saying, offering me a sideline reporter spot for their game at Chelsea. And I just told you what it was too,
Chelsea
but
and Tecumseh.
yeah, that's what it is. And it's going to be at Chelsea.
Yep. That's by the way, that is WHMI's game of the week this week. So Chelsea and Tecumseh. So yeah, Dan Leach and all those guys out there are gonna be out there at that. Actually, that's another rematch. It's been fun seeing all these teams playing against each other. The two teams that battled for the white crown. I mean, no, yeah, it is yeah, that would be the white crown last year. So yeah, Tecumseh and Chelsea are at it again. So yeah, so we'll see how that one goes. So how did you first get into like broadcasting, and what it's like I've seen you out there doing all these podcasts and all that stuff, and yeah, how'd you get into this?
So I was about like probably in like 7th or 8th grade, and my mom kind of pitched to me the idea because I'm just a kid that enjoys watching sports and being at sporting events and everything to do with that nature. And she talked to me about someone that she knew personally that went to Specs Howard, and she's like, "I mean, you like to just like, commentate on the games for fun and like you do it like jokingly in like a parody way." But she's like, this is something that you might want to do and seriously consider. And then throughout high school, like it's something like, yeah, I want to go here, but I never really put myself like out there. Like I think I made like YouTube videos when I was like in 5th grade, like little like Minecraft stuff. They're not able to be seen anymore. Okay. But no, but finally my scene, and I was at the media broadcasting class at Harlan High School. And I mean, my junior year was Mr. Cheney, and then senior year was Mr. Butzer. And then I got involved with doing my first like really big thing that like kind of, gave me the confidence to speak in front of people was my PA announcing for Heartland's Youth League, which is Haya, with the games at the auxiliary field. And that's something I started doing. And then throughout the winter, I'm like, well, I kind of want to just keep something to do for fun, keep me, putting myself out there. So that's when I started my podcast, which is based around college football. And then I did that through pretty much through all the whole winter and summer. And then I enrolled in the Specs Howard in about like October of last year. And then I had obviously everything set up, and I'm a student there currently. And then, but it was about like March, and this was the time that JD was still the athletic director at Heartland.
JD Wheeler.
And yeah. And then me and him got into touch, and he's like, I'm going to give you Zach Linfield's number. Make sure you contact him, anything you need. And then there was an athletic director switch actually with Brian Hassler now being there,
Yep.
which funny story. I grew up in Rochester till I was 5, and then he obviously coming over from Rochester Adams. It was definitely something to like when I first talked to him was something cool to build on from there. But no, and then so I did play-by-play for Heartland, all their high school games, and then also I did the announcing for the Haya football as well. And obviously now I'm working with some stuff with WHMI as well, which is something that's been really cool. And I'm definitely learning a lot more, especially from just one game being on the air, and learning from guys like Dan and Rich was something very nice, and Terry as well.
Yeah. Yeah. What was going into those games, and so what's next kind of going into, the next, few weeks, months? What are you really kind of looking at doing?
So obviously I want to be involved with sports. And if I just got, another offer with WHMI, doing being the sideline reporter this week. My goal, and I said this on the air on Friday, my goal is to be doing commentating for college football. That's something that I'm really been passionate about, and that we talked about before we actually hopped on the interview. But that's where I really want to be the next few weeks. I mean, it's kind of just a lot of stuff in this industry. And if you talk to really anyone, a lot of it's just opportunistic in who you know. So that's something that definitely I might never know what's next, but whatever is in the foreseeable future for me, I'm just trying to jump at opportunities, and I'm going to be reaching out to more companies and like I would like to be involved with either like state champs or the prep or all these other stuff while I'm still attending school.
Yeah. Okay. Like, so you host a podcast about college football. What's that?
So my podcast is called the Engage 8 podcast. I do it with my friend from Specs Howard as well, which he works with state champs as a production assistant. His name's Robbie Elliott. He played football at Clarkson and also played baseball there, and also played baseball at Spring Arbor. But he's gone to like one of his buddies is the beat writer for Michigan, and he has like seen a lot of like he's a huge Michigan fan. But so obviously with everything going on now, so interesting, a little fun to have debate with him. But no, my podcast, I started as something just like, fun, like, hey, like this is just, it's just to have fun. And then the more it's gone on, I mean, there's steadily becoming more an increase in numbers and listeners, and where you started using different softwares as well with everything like that. And something that I'm definitely more serious with, and that I would love to like if I could be involved with some sort of network on like a podcast or any like talk show in general. Like it's something that I also want to show, even though it's not technically, even though it's own made, it's still something that you can show for yourself to other companies as well.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, going into this, it's so let's kind of talk about this. So, always the thing is you host a podcast with a Michigan fan. You are a Michigan State fan, so that's kind
Right.
of interesting. So, what do you guys mainly talk about?
We do 2 episodes per week right now, and it's basically our reactions to the games, our thoughts, our analysis. Sometimes some of the headlines or like injury updates. Like this week we're definitely going to talk about like, how Cam Rising shut down for the year, how Riley Leonard, with him getting hurt in that Florida State game and getting pulled, that's definitely going to be a topic of conversation. And then also we do our preview of like what are our big games, what are our expectations. We make upset picks of the weeks as well. So teams that are like significantly like underdogs in those games, we try and predict.
Okay. So let's ask this. What are some of the big storylines heading into this week in the interesting world of college football?
So obviously there's the allegations or the investigation with Michigan, and that's something that's going to be really interesting to see, what the NCAA really does with Harbaugh and everything going on with that staff. My guess, they'll probably take away scholarships or something like that. That's typically like if you look in depth into like, all the other scandals with like even players getting in trouble or coaches like having recruiting violations, like typically it's just you take scholarships away, you take some sort of funding away from that. With Harbaugh, they did something a little bit different. They actually suspended him for 4 games with his recruiting violation, which even though I'm a State fan, probably, a little bit even harsh for buying a player a cheeseburger. But yeah, no, it's something that's going to be interesting to develop. Kind of going into this week, is Caleb Williams going to even play out the rest of the season? They had that game against Utah that ended up being decided in the final minutes. It's going to be very interesting to see, especially with Utah playing with a backup quarterback, because they just announced that Cam Rising is shut down for the year, along with some guys on the defensive side. Other than that, kind of see how there's nothing too much, and I still have to do a little bit more before I end up recording, but definitely with the Penn State Ohio State game, that was something interesting to see. I want to see how Penn State can really bounce back, because Fashanu, one of the big tackle prospects in this upcoming draft, just proves that he can't run block. And then also with Aller having no time, it's going to be something interesting to see. And it changes every single week for college football. A team like Washington, will go dominate a team like Michigan State or Boise State, and then a few weeks later struggle with Arizona and Arizona State. So it's definitely an interesting thing to follow and talk about, but it's something that I love doing in college football. I think it's one of the best things to cover.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Noah. Thank you so much for coming on. Maybe we'll have you on again sometime. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll for sure be in touch at the least.